Hey dolls! I know it has been a long time since I last made a video. Oh my gosh. I've been busy with working as a server and auditioning / honing my craft. I'm still at it. I have been working on the script for the next essay for the past couple of months. Like, I started in April. It's July now. I'm awful, I know. Well, the next video is about Shadow of the Colossus, but mostly a different take than how others approach talking about the game. It was getting pretty lengthy, and there was one part that I felt could be its own video. So, just to be safe, I will be spoiling Shadow of the Colossus and Ico, but I'm not going to go too much in the depth of Ico's story, but, there's your warning. Also, please subscribe to my channel, as your encouragement and presence is also motivation for me to work on these videos. Now, it's a safe assumption that you, the viewer, are already familiar with Fumito Ueda's and Team Ico's works. Ueda's titles are rather unique among the medium of video games. They focus mostly on gameplay, but the story told in each of his titles is minimal and lacks exposition. And it's that aspect of Ueda's games that have led many fans to endlessly speculate on what are honestly simple yet effective narratives. Fan theories are common to the gaming landscape, and Shadow of the Colossus is no exception. Ever since its release nearly as many years ago as there are Colossus to defeat, one theory has lingered among the fanbase that I just do not like. That Mono will later become the queen in Ico. It's just a bad theory, and I have no patience for theories that cheapen a work. Now, to be fair, this kind of theory isn't as bad as "it was all a dream" or "they were dead all along" theories. Okay, those are the worst kind because they tend to take what is this truly fantastical and imaginative work to only then hammer it back into the ground, killing the imaginative spirit. Not every work that does revolve around the story being a dream or dead all along is bad. There are some really great ones out there. I'm specifically talking about works where that is not at all implied, inferred, intended to be a valid interpretation of said work. Mono becoming the queen is nowhere near that bad. I still don't like it, though. The general gist of the Mono becomes the queen theory is that part of Dormin now resides in Mono's resurrected body. This theory arose because for most of the game, we hear Dormin speak in two dissonant voices, a male and female one. Up until they take over Wander in the ending, where it seems the feminine voice disappears. This has led people to think that the masculine part of Dormin is possessing Wander and that the feminine part has taken over Mono. But since she's dead, she doesn't wake up right away. This means that Mono is no longer human and is immortal and will eventually become the queen at some point in the future. The evidence for this theory is extremely lacking, with the exception that Shadow of the Colossus is a prequel to Ico. I had to double check if that was the case, considering how the fans online talk about this game. There's some really impressive digging through the rabbit holes with this one, trust me. It was definitely my takeaway when I first finished the game years ago. I mean, there's a horned baby boy at the end of the game, and many players of Ueda's second game had also played Ico. I did find a Wired interview with him back in 2006 where he confirms this. Is there any connection between the worlds of Ico and Shadow of the Colossus? There's no specific connection as far as a timeline, but both games exist in the same world. But you've said the baby we see at the end of Colossus is the first baby born with horns referred to in the backstory of Ico. Yes, I wanted to give some idea to the player after you complete the game that there was a connection to Iko. That's why I put in the baby with the horns. If somebody goes all the way through the game, I wanted them to be rewarded. He's so thoughtful. So, Shadow of the Colossus is essentially the origin story of the accursed horned children that eventually leads to Iko's story. Okay, that's 1 point for the theory. Another argument for it I see is that Mono and the Queen look alike. And by look alike, they just look like women. Everyone knows that both games are designed by the same people, but fail to acknowledge that their similarities could be that's just the designer's art style. Every individual artist has their own unique art style, and while they may change and evolve over time as their skills improve, there are qualities that are carried down in each work and shared in different characters' designs. I honestly don't see a resemblance between the two characters. I think Mono has more in common with Ueda, but again, I think this is just in line with the aesthetics of Ueda's works. I stated earlier the impetus for this theory is that Dormin speaks in dual voices up until the end of the game. The thing is, there are a few factors that have led people to misunderstand Dormin and their voices. In the English version, Dormin uses the pronoun we in reference to themselves, and with them speaking in dual voices can lead English-speaking players to think they are composed of multiple deities, similar to Legion. But the original Japanese text uses an archaic pronoun ware, which lets the Japanese audience know that Dormin is an ancient being. This can be a bit tricky as Japanese is a language that doesn't normally use plural forms. It's usually inferred within the sentence. There is a plural form in their language by adding tachi to the end of a noun. For example, "Watashitachi wa sushi o tabemashita" translates to "we ate sushi," meaning I and at least one other person had eaten sushi. My point is that the original script does not explicitly state Dormin to be composed of multiple beings. The art book states that the shadows that surround Wander after the defeat of each Colossus are parts of Dormin. I do not think they intended Dormin to be composed of multiple bodies, but that they have been torn apart in a state that has fractured their being, including their voice, until we have freed them from all the Colossus, that is. I believe the usage of we and our is more aligned with the royal we, as in, we have deemed this theory to be utter nonsense. A deity using the royal we makes a lot of sense for an English translation, as when a monarch uses the royal we, they are incorporating God into their speech. Thus, it really means God and I. God and I have deemed this theory to be utter nonsense. Well, then, why does the female voice disappear then, you ask? It's quite simple, really. It doesn't. The female voice is there. When I was playing the PlayStation 3 Remaster and the PlayStation 4 Remake, I was able to make out the female voice layered in there. But I wanted to see if I could make it clearer, just to be sure. Thanks to a friend of mine who has some audio engineering know-how, I asked if they could play with the levels to see if we could bring the voice out. Now, the sample was from an MP3 file of the cutscene where Dormin speaks after taking over Wander's body, so it wasn't the most optimal, but the best I could provide. Now, my friend has not played Shadow of the Colossus. I know. But they agree with me on being able to hear a female voice. They sent me back 3 audio files, which I will play for you. Let me know what you can hear.
You will hear me call. You are the Hidokai, old iron legs. Alorizo, Ameku, Ikoliu, Ukama Mikuriu, Infrista, Rukufu. You will hear me call. You are the Hidokai, old iron legs. Alorizo, Ameku, Ikoliu, Ukama Mikuriu, Infrista, Rukufu.
Now, I definitely hear another voice alongside the masculine voice. Part of why the feminine voice is so hard to make out is that it is now perfectly in sync with the masculine voice, which overpowers it, as well as the music and the special effects they applied on the voices. I prefer to think their voice was also fragmented, thus out of sync with itself, to reflect Dormin's fractured being. After we have freed Dormin's essence from each of the Colossus, we see Dormin become whole, with Wander giving in to becoming their host, and the voices are now no longer discordant with each other. I believe the usage of a male and female voice actor for Dormin is primarily to communicate to us that Dormin is something above human, and that they are essentially genderless, or non-binary as the kids these days say. The introductory scene lets us in on the Forbidden Lands, being a place birthed from the resonance of intersecting points. A place where opposing forces collide. The masculine and feminine, life and death, shadow and light. I also don't subscribe to thinking reviving Mono changed her in any way. The price for the forbidden ritual was paid by Wander. I know someone will mention that in the comments, and I'm firmly of the opinion that Mono is resurrected as a normal human woman. Now, I stated earlier that I think this theory cheapens the narrative of the game. While I went through and pointed out a couple of things that often slip past most players, it's important to clarify why it's bad in my opinion. I think by saying Mono eventually becomes the queen, and that Dormin is also using her as a host, lessens the impact of the ending, and throws away the importance she has to Wander's motive. After the defeat of each Colossus, there are multiple signs of our progress to reaching our goal. Another shadow surrounds Wander. Another dove lingers around Mono's body. One other thing is that after being pierced by the black tendrils, we are then taken to a tunnel of light. At first, we only hear breathing. But eventually a woman starts speaking. The art book states that this is Mono, and her soul draws closer to the world of the living after each Colossus falls. What's the point of being able to hear her voice if, in the end, it isn't really Mono who wakes up? Isn't it far more heartbreaking and tragic that Dormin, whom many players interpret as evil and the true villain, was in the end true to their word? That she wakes up, the woman Wander loved, possibly having no knowledge beyond an inkling of what has transpired for her to be here. Does she know what Wander did to revive her? Is she at all aware of the few moments prior to her awakening, with Emon confronting Wander and Dormin? Does she realize the infant is the man she loves and how he winded up in this form? We don't know, and it's not really important for us to know these things. It doesn't make any difference in the end. That's what makes it so bittersweet. We were able to reunite Mono and Wander, but the lovers they once were will never be together again. Torn apart once more by Emon, by a man who claimed they knew what was right. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I'll try to make videos more frequently, even if they're not the long video essays. But if you want to talk to me a bit more regularly, you can join my Discord by following the link in the description. I'll be working hard on the full video essay on Shadow of the Colossus as well, so please be on the lookout for that. Overall, thank you so much for watching. You've been a doll.